My name is Cassandra Bennett. I am a 34-year-old resident of Baton Rouge, Louisiana. No matter how imperfect the people you love may be, I have always felt that family entails loyalty. I paid a higher price for that belief than I had anticipated. I had been covering every expense of my sister's wedding for months. The music, the catering, the flowers, the lakefront setting, and even her golden initial-stitched bridal gown. It has nothing to do with bragging. It was about love and demonstrating that we could still behave as a family. My phone buzzed that morning as I was getting ready for work. It was Clarissa's message. "Hey, Cass, we had to make some changes," she wrote. I froze, staring at the computer, waiting for the joke that never materialized. "You're no longer on the guest list." "What do you mean?" I replied, and she responded almost immediately. The world fell silent as I said, "It's just that you eat too much. It's a classy event." The sound of coffee brewing had vanished, but I could still smell it. That supposedly elegant occasion had been paid for by me. She had her ideal wedding because of me. However, I was suddenly an outsider at a party that I had created. My spouse, Ethan, watched my face become white and didn't inquire. "This time, don't stay quiet," he stated simply. I took another look at the message. "If I'm not invited, neither is my money," I muttered to myself as my reflection faded from the phone's surface. Before we continue, please let me know in the comments what time you are watching and the city you're in. It makes it easier for me to realize how widely this tale of betrayal and family has extended. During my lunch break, it began gently, like most betrayals do, with a single phone call. My phone lit up with a name I hadn't seen in months while I was halfway through a salad at my desk. Clarissa. Her voice sounded polished and kind, the way people sound when they're trying to get something. "Cass, hello." She said, "I was wondering if you could help me out a little. A few minor details for the wedding." She giggled a little when I inquired about what kind of small items. You know, catering quotes, venue deposits, and perhaps some decor. "After everything is resolved, I will reimburse you." She talked as though money were like air, floating and returning on its own. I wanted to take her word for it. She sounded so genuine, almost like the younger sister I used to fill in for when she would disappear. However, it had nothing to do with late-night concerts this time. The sum was in the thousands. I told Ethan about the call that night. "A little help usually turns into a lot, Cass," he added, looking up from his glass. I dismissed it with a smile. Her wedding is taking place. She is deserving of something exceptional. He nodded quietly, as if he already knew how this would end. When my mother, Margaret, called 2 nights later to invite me to supper, it was an unusual gesture that immediately raised suspicions in my mind. The restaurant she selected was one of her favorites in downtown Baton Rouge. It had too much air conditioning and gloomy lighting. I immediately understood why she had asked me to sit there as soon as I sat down. She gave a kind grin. "You are aware of the significance of this wedding for your sister." She started carefully slicing her food. "Given her youth, all of this preparation may be too much for her to handle. Perhaps you could relieve her of some of her burden." I swirled my beverage. I replied that she had previously requested me to take care of the venue. "Perfect," she answered too hastily while feigning appreciation. She brought up the one by the lake. "Isn't it beautiful?" Then she said her favorite statement, the one that had affected me since I was a young child. "You've always been the one in charge. You work well, Cassandra, and family supports family." Every time shame masqueraded as tradition, the song was the same. Up until that point, my father, Howard, had remained silent during the meal. His tone was calm but methodical as he used a napkin to wipe his mouth. "Cass, you earn an excellent living. You should assist your sister. She's not as lucky." The last push was there. I could have argued, but I knew that would only exacerbate the situation. "All right," I replied. "The venue will be handled by me." Squeezing my hand as though she had won a bargain, Margaret reached across the table. "My daughter is that." I had a meeting with the event coordinator beside the lake the following morning. She tapped her pen against the form with efficiency. She said, "To secure your date, we'll need a deposit." I signed my name, wrote Clarissa's name on the client line, and wrote the check. My stomach turned, but my penmanship appeared confident. I switched off the radio on the way home. I assured myself that I had made the proper decision as the sun burnt low across the street. I was even a little proud of myself. I had just made a mistake, a tiny but louder portion murmured. When Ethan inquired, "Did you already pay?" That weekend, while I was preparing supper, I replied in the affirmative and gave the specifics. He put down the spatula and glanced at me. "Are you certain that this isn't manipulation?" It was simpler than acknowledging uncertainty, so I grinned. Family is involved. What might go wrong? He didn't chuckle. With contemplative eyes, he simply returned to the stove. I put the receipt in a folder later that evening, looked at the sum, and let out a sigh. It was a big favor. It covered the cost of a year's worth of college tuition. Nevertheless, I persuaded myself that it was all right. Big sisters do that. They are beneficial. They simplify things. They maintain the line so that others do not have to. Scrolling through photos of the venue, the open deck, the gentle light, and the serene sea, I sat on the couch. Something changed inside of me. I wasn't merely covering the cost of a wedding. I was purchasing a piece of silence, possibly even a piece of property. My banking app notified me that the payment had cleared 2 days later. There was no thankfulness after. There was no call, no text, just a diminished equilibrium and a sense that I had crossed a boundary from which I would never be able to return. I never signed up for the buying binge that resulted from one favor. One Monday morning, when I was getting ready for work, a message from Clarissa appeared. Just a quick thing, Cass. It's red. Atelier Elise has a new collection, but the outfit I liked is no longer available. It is more sophisticated. Until my card clears, could you pay the deposit? It was starting to sound like a family custom to use the word deposit. I didn't respond right away. Another SMS came in 15 minutes later. Just $3,000. Later, I'll email the receipt. There was only expectation, no doubt, no hesitancy. I wondered when generosity had subtly transformed into responsibility as I opened my banking app and gazed at the decreasing balance. I was looking through my emails at lunch that day when I came across one from Margaret. The subject line read, "Small things for the big day." Inside was a neatly organized list, flower arrangements, photographer upgrades, lighting design, and even monogrammed napkins. At the end, she'd added one line in italics. A little help means a lot. It was signed simply, "Love, Mom." I could practically hear her soft, courteous, and completely manipulative voice. I didn't respond to the email either. I thought that silence would be sufficient to put an end to it, but in my family, silence was never seen as rejection. 2 days later, my phone buzzed once more, and this time it was Howard. His message was brief and almost businesslike. "Keep your mother happy." By the end of that week, my inbox and message threads looked like a wedding catalog. Clarissa sent pictures of shoes, centerpieces, champagne brands, and bridal robes. "This one's only $600. They're giving us a deal. It's for the guest's comfort." Each message was a demand dressed up as an update. I started responding less and less until I stopped altogether. The requests continued. When the florist called to confirm color themes I hadn't even chosen, I realized Clarissa had given them my number and billing address. "We're just confirming your payment preference," the woman said cheerfully. I thanked her and hung up, half giggling, half wanting to scream as I stared at the ceiling. They had made me an unseen sponsor, the kind that finances fantasies without being asked to see them. That night, Ethan and I sat at the kitchen table with receipts strewn out in front of us like leaves. "You're their safety net," he said. I scowled and traced the numbers with my finger, saying, "Not their sister." I muttered, "I just want things to go smoothly." He reclined. "Peace for you or smooth for them?" I didn't respond. The realization of how readily affection could be misinterpreted for consent was embarrassing. I learned from my parents that being a family required giving, but they never told me when to stop. There was a hint of shame in every request. I was self-centered if I declined. I was trustworthy if I agreed. Reliability became practical at some point. I used to obsessively check my phone at night, fearing fresh notifications. In my latest messages, Clarissa's name came up more frequently than anyone else's. She would send a voice memo, laughing about how everything was coming together so beautifully, followed by a link to a new string quartet and a discount code for videographers. In the hopes that she would notice, I started ignoring her texts. She didn't. "We're finalizing menus today," so she emailed a reminder regarding catering expenses for the next morning. By then, the entire cost was over $15,000. I kept track of every transfer in a spreadsheet because that was the one aspect of this circus that I could manage, not because I anticipated payback. Ethan let out a deep breath like he was seeing a slow-motion crash when I told him the number. "You are aware that they consider your funds to be a part of the budget, Cass? Not as a favor." It wasn't amusing, yet I laughed. "Only till the wedding is over." The untruth stuck to my throat as I spoke. While going through my emails later that evening, I came across another message from Margaret. The band retainer is something I neglected to mention. It stated that a PDF invoice was included. Another line beneath it: Clarissa is fortunate to have a sister such as yourself. The phrases were crisp and sugar-coated as they shone in the screen light. Without responding, I shut down the laptop. It dawned on me for the first time that none of them had expressed gratitude. Never once. I checked my account once more on Saturday while Ethan was cutting the yard. Almost $20,000 was lost. $20,000 for a wedding that wasn't mine, for a family that saw giving as an obligation. I gazed at the screen until the numbers became hazy. After that, I shut down the app, put my phone face down, and relaxed as the air conditioner hummed softly. I was waiting for regret, but it never materialized. The only fatigue that did this was the kind that sinks deeper under your ribs when patience becomes something heavier, rather than appearing on your face. I was aware that something had changed. I had been the one to muddle the distinction between self-care and kindness. 2 weeks before the wedding, the message that put a stop to it all arrived. While I was at work, in between emails and a half-cooled cup of coffee, it showed up on the family group chat. Only adults. Elegant and simple attire is required. The message sent by Clarissa was replete with hearts and sparkling emojis. There was something colder behind her upbeat tone, something that contrasted with the warmth of the emojis. I froze as I scrolled down the thread. The guest table chart she had included did not include my name. The family was color-coded in gold in the file. Vendors in gray, friends in blue. I wasn't there. I initially believed it to be an error. Did you forget to add me? I typed, then erased it. Typed once more. Could you look over the list, Clarissa? Then deleted that as well. I gave her a call at last. 3 rings later, she answered. Her voice was distant but lovely. Cass, hello. What's going on? I made an effort to sound composed. The list of guests you forwarded. There is no mention of my name. A pause too long to be courteous. Almost relieved that I had observed, she said, Oh, yes, regarding that. We had to adjust a few things. I awaited an explanation. You are aware of the atmosphere of the occasion. The images must have a unified appearance. She trailed off before delivering it smoothly, as if she had practiced the sentence too much. Cass, you destroy the pictures. I didn't understand for a moment. The words didn't make sense. Pardon me, she said, letting out the quiet sigh she employed to act patient. Simply put, this is a minimalist theme, and your style is a little loud. Nothing about it is personal. I nearly burst out laughing. Nothing private. I paid for the wedding, but you're not inviting me. She blurted out, You're overreacting. One day, that is. Avoid making it about yourself. The line then died. I gazed at my image on the dark phone screen. After humiliation, there's a unique silence. The type that is more audible than sound. Another message arrived 10 minutes later. From Howard this time. Only 4 words. Avoid creating drama. Give it up. No salutation. No punctuation. He seemed to have been anticipating this, as though my submission was necessary for the family to be at peace. I didn't respond. I was driving home that night when the phone rang once more. Margaret. Curiosity overcame my reluctance to respond. She spoke in a quiet, pretentious tone. Let's avoid embarrassing the family, Cass, honey. All right, embarrass them, I said again, tightening my hold on the steering wheel. I've been funding this wedding for months, Mom. We're all thankful that she took a sharp breath, but this is Clarissa's special day. She can see. You are aware of her artistic abilities. She eliminated her own sister since she was so creative. Don't be so emotional, Cass. Her patience was waning as she spoke. You are aware of the current state of social media. People pass judgment. You wouldn't want to cause her any discomfort. My hands were shaking so much that I nearly missed a turn. I said, She finds my presence uncomfortable. There was a pause, followed by the tone she was accustomed to using to end unwanted chats. This is not what we should do. It's just one day. Be the more mature person. She hung up after that. Ethan was cooking a pot of soup in the kitchen when I arrived home. Before I could say anything, he turned when he saw the look on my face. Didn't they do something? I put my phone down on the counter and nodded. I was not invited by Clarissa. She said that I had damaged the pictures. He blinked carefully, his incredulity having already worn off. What about your parents? Advised me not to cause a commotion? With his eyes crossed and his face dark with subdued rage, he leaned against the counter. You are still paying even after they deleted you. I took a while to respond. Every syllable that remained unsaid seemed to be pressing against my constricted throat. The silence was broken by the sound of the soup simmering. Ethan shook his head when I finally added, "Maybe they'll realize how cruel this is." His voice was almost too calm as he said, "People who erase you don't realize it, Cass. They just expect you to keep funding the fantasy." I sat on the couch that evening and went over the wedding updates once again. Clarissa continued to share mock-ups of table settings in the group conversation. My mom responded with her heart. Every communication is liked by my father. In real time, I was invisible. My name is my contribution. My efforts were all neatly erased as if they had never happened. I gazed at Clarissa's most recent snapshot of the white flowery arch by the lake, which I had reserved and paid for. The only indication that I was still involved in this scenario was the faint shimmer of my reflection on the screen. When I closed my eyes, a horrible realization dawned on me. I had constructed their celebration, and they had built it on top of me. I grabbed my phone, navigated to the banking app, and hovered over the most recent catering payment that was due. My heart rate stabilized. My money was out if I was out. There was an eerie silence on the morning of her wedding in Baton Rouge, as if something was about to shatter. As I sat at the kitchen table with my laptop open and a refreshing cup of coffee next to me, light seeped through the blinds. A spreadsheet with invoices, payments, and receipts lit on the screen. All the money I had invested in Clarissa's dream. Every contract had my name at the top, a clear and conclusive indication that I had created this day from the ground up. Realizing that I was both the architect and the ghost lurking around its boundaries was weird. I started with the florist. I said calmly and courteously, "This is Cassandra Holai. The terms of the event have been modified by the customer. Pause all services, please." Clearly unsure, the woman on the line hesitated. She asked, "Pause as in cancel?" I answered, "Until further notice." She checked her system for a few seconds and verified that the contract is in your name, so that's okay. I felt the first thread come loose as I thanked her and hung up. The caterer arrived next. I was immediately recognized by the management. "Hello, Mrs. Holt. Delivery is scheduled for Tuesday. Is there a problem?" Yes, I did state that the client is no longer permitted by this contract. Hold the order and set up a partial refund, please. Something had changed in the air around me by the time I spoke with the lighting crew. He remained silent for a while before just saying, "Understood." Every call seemed cleaner, easier, and almost rhythmic, and my hands were no longer shaking. Once I confirmed that the payments originated from my account, some suppliers seemed perplexed, but others didn't raise any concerns. I grinned to myself when one man even giggled quietly and said, "You're the calmest cancellation I've had all month." "It's not a cancellation," I replied. Halfway through my list, Ethan emerged at the doorway, watching me with his towel slung over one shoulder. "It's a correction." "You're really doing it," he murmured. "I am. Is this retaliation?" he inquired. I shook my head as I glanced up at him. "No, it's a correction." The words seemed fluid, almost too serene, as if they had been waiting for the ideal opportunity. I closed the laptop and reclined after the final call. I was no longer pressured by the house's silence. It seemed well-deserved in pure light. The room's boundaries were illuminated by sunlight streaming over the counter. Unaware that her ideal day had already started to fall apart, Clarissa was most likely seated in a makeup chair across the city, grinning for cameras. By midday, my phone was full of missed calls from unknown numbers that were probably merchants attempting to get in touch with her. I disregarded them all. Emails verified halted services and refunds. Every new communication was like severing a thread that had been preventing me from moving forward. Ethan sat down at the table with me. "Before the ceremony, do you think they'll notice?" he inquired. "Probably not," I replied. "Contracts are not read by them. All they read are just justifications." He chuckled briefly. "Tell me not to cross you." I gave a small smirk. I would have to be erased first. The wedding was scheduled to start at 2 rather mayhem broke out. My screen was inundated with notifications, so someone must have launched a live stream. After hesitating, I opened one. The lakefront location was bathed in intense daylight in the video. Bare chairs, carefully set but devoid of flowers, stood on the wooden arch. The tables revealed guests wandering around in bewilderment. Even through the speaker, their murmurs could be heard. The white of Clarissa's gown stood out against the muted background when she emerged in the middle of the picture. Shouting at someone off camera, she gripped her phone. Her movements were frenzied and acute. I could read her lips even in the absence of sound. "What do you mean, canceled?" she said. Behind her, Howard and Margaret remained still and rigid, their features pallid, their poise eroding as rumors circulated among the throng. In real time, the flawless image they had worked so hard to present fell apart. I didn't feel satisfied or victorious. I experienced a sense of silence. The type that comes when you at last cease to be accountable for the storms of others. The live stream was flooded with comments. Who doesn't remember flowers? This appears to be cursed. In real time, that is karma. I turned down the music and sipped my latte slowly. The scene across the lake was framed like a movie from the cafe window where I was sitting. Visitors started to let their heels sink into the soft grass. White linens flapped in the breeze like surrender flags as the band packed away instruments they had never played. In the glass, my image shimmered slightly, calm, steady, and at last liberated. After a few minutes, Ethan came over and took the seat across from me. "It's all over the internet," he replied. Clarissa's nuptials just fell apart. I saw the swirl dissipate as I mixed my coffee. "Imploded sounds correct? Do you feel bad about it?" he inquired. "No," I replied. After a few periods of silence, he leaned back and nodded, saying, "I just returned everything to where it belonged." "They're going to come for you." "Let them," I said. I'm done being quiet. Dozens of little snippets that were dispersed throughout feeds had already taken the place of the live stream. The perfect image that Clarissa had worked so hard to maintain had turned into a joke in the public eye. And in the midst of that turmoil, something even more subdued nestled inside of me, restoring equilibrium. The sun shimmered across the lake as we went outside. Now the space was filled with vacant chairs and wind-scattered, toppled petals. "Looks classy now," I muttered, almost to myself as I took another look. By dawn, Baton Rouge was humming with restless activity. Every grocery store and cafe queue was full of individuals watching the same videos on their phones. Overnight, the pandemonium surrounding Clarissa's wedding became viral. While television anchors described the scenario as if it were a documentary about arrogance, local radio commentators discussed what went wrong. There were a ton of notifications when I woke up, but none from my family. Rather, Clarissa's message was the first to be published. "Envious my sister ruined my wedding." With the withered bouquet still in her hands, her shot showed tears and mascara running down her face. Her self-pitying comments were effective for a while. Comments were full of sympathy. I was branded resentful, self-centered, and unstable by strangers who stood up for her. I read it all silently, not upset, but detached, as if I were watching a storm through thick glass. Then the first crack showed just before noon. A screenshot of the payment contract signed under Cassandra Hull was shared by a local photographer. For transparency, the entire event was paid for by her. Within minutes, everything turned. Sympathy became suspicion, and suspicion turned into fury. Screenshots of bookings, receipts, text threads, and ultimately the line that burned through the internet like gasoline appeared in his description. "She consumes excessive amounts of food. It's an elegant occasion?" The headline was that one sentence. Videos of reactions appeared hourly. Outrage erupted in the comment sections after someone altered the post with the statement, "She banned her own sister from her wedding after taking her money." Imagine making fun of the person who gave you the money. Class cannot be purchased with money. All of this is something she deserves. The tide had entirely changed. In an attempt to take back control, Clarissa removed her post and uploaded a new one. "Please put an end to the hatred. Although the harm was irreparable, this has gone too far." One by one, brands pulled out. Statements severing ties were released by local boutique salons, including a jewelry store that had previously promoted her engagement campaign. Previously featured on glossy blogs, her identity has surfaced under a Thong family hoax that was popular in Louisiana. Howard and Margaret moved forward as though a crisis had called them. "First," my mother called, her voice harsh under forced calm. "This has to stop," she remarked. "Bullies are targeting Clarissa." "No," I said coolly. "Clarissa is coming to light." Together, they made an appearance on a local morning show that evening, speaking in the voice of miscommunication victims. Margaret insisted that I had misinterpreted Clarissa's intentions and informed the host that family disputes should be kept private. Before an email thread appeared later that evening, the interview was nearly convincing, one in which Margaret and Clarissa talk about persuading Cass to cover the cost of upgrades. "She won't say no if you call it a family investment," was the line that sealed their doom. The video became viral in a matter of hours, and the show discreetly deleted the interview from its official page. My inbox was overflowing the following morning, but the tone had shifted. Strangers expressed regret for what they had said. A few sellers thanked me via messages for handling everything with such grace. I didn't answer. Finally, silence was more powerful than defense. Scrolling through his phone, Ethan watched the mayhem from across the kitchen. They're trending again, he murmured. I stirred my coffee and nodded. Carissa's losing sponsorships and your mother's emails are public. I answered, I didn't expose them. The reality did. He paused and gave me a contemplative look. By now, the majority would have contributed to the noise with a lengthy post. I gave a small smile. No, let the story end in silence. I sat on the balcony outdoors that evening while the city lights across the river blinked. There was a steady, chilly wind that exuded a sense of near tranquility. Clarissa's pages were no longer accessible. Howard and Margaret were no longer seen on TV. At last, the cacophony that had previously permeated every part of my thoughts had subsided. I could see the irony. For years, they advised me to remain silent to preserve the family's reputation. When silence might preserve one's reputation, it was precisely that silence, their perception of it, that constructed a house of falsehoods. They fell apart. Mine remained unaltered. After reading the previous few headlines, I locked my phone. Leaning on the railing next to me, Ethan produced 2 mugs of tea. What now? He inquired. Observing the lights ripple over the lake, I spoke now. Nothing. They will have to deal with what they created. I'll continue to move. Will they ever offer an apology, in your opinion? He inquired. I gave it some thought. I whispered, they already have. With what they lost, not with words. I didn't feel burdened, guilty, or desperate to be understood for the first time in years. What I could never do, the truth had done. The world heard what it had to say. A year had gone by since the never-to-be wedding, and life had taken unforeseen turns. The sound subsided. The city didn't remember. The hush that ensued, however, was distinct. Earned, softer, nearly sensitive. In a brightly illuminated area of downtown Baton Rouge, I set up my design office in a little room with high ceilings and morning-colored walls. Halt Interiors was written on the glass door. The first project was the makeover of a hotel chain's lobby. When they signed the contract, I experienced an ownership direction piece that didn't depend on anyone's approval, something I hadn't felt in years. My days were occupied with work, and I felt more grounded than any apology could have when I witnessed designs come to life. Ethan used to make jokes about how I meticulously rebuilt myself layer by layer, much like I built rooms. In the meantime, my parents slid toward the calm, reputation-free life they had once feared. After the emails were made public, Howard lost his position on the church board. When people stopped coming to Margaret's social lunches, she stopped throwing them. Once praising their family values, the neighbors now avoid conversation by crossing the street. Once the face of bridal commercials, Clarissa was divorced in a matter of months. She returned to my parents' home where I used to feel invisible, after her husband filed for bankruptcy and sponsors disappeared. The tabloids moved on, but memories of little towns never do. I didn't want to exact revenge. It had been sufficient to watch the repercussions play out on their own. For once, the world had made amends without my voice demanding justice. I concentrated on developing environments that gave people a sense of security, equilibrium, and visibility. And in doing so, I discovered the version of myself that didn't require permission to exist, and that they had attempted to eradicate. My inbox pinged one afternoon as I was going over sketches for a client. Margaret Holt was the sender. I didn't open it. The subject line was just help. For a little moment, my hand hovered, but there was clarity and no hesitancy. I hit the erase button. Forgiving them did not bring about peace. It resulted from my inability to continue financing my own humiliation. My friend Tessa visited the studio a week later. When everything broke down, she was the only one who hadn't chosen a side. The one who sent coffee rather than inquiries. Grinning, she surveyed the completed area. "You've really made it yours," she remarked. I put down my pencil and nodded. When it is constructed from something genuine, it feels different. After a moment of hesitation, she asked softly. I thought about everything as I gazed up at her and asked, "Do you regret it? Any of it? The solitude, the loss, the storm that tore the old walls down so new ones could stand." Finally, I responded, "No." I stopped paying for my own humiliation. I will never make that payment again. With a knowing little smile, Tessa walked away without saying anything more. Some friendships don't require justifications. They simply make room for the truth. That evening, I sat at my desk, camera, and recorded the last lines of a story I hadn't intended to tell, but I felt obligated to do so. The red light continued to blink. When you lose sight of your limits, family can destroy you. Even if my voice was modest at first, I was assured. Unrestricted kindness is submission rather than love. Walking away isn't always unkind either. There is no other way to maintain peace. Before starting, I took a moment to let the quiet settle. I appreciate you listening all the way through. Tell us what you think.